Hi, welcome to Culturally Determined. I'm your host, Aryeh Cohen-Wade, and my guest today is Josh Barnard. Josh, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, glad to be here. I'm Josh Barnard. I've been in the tech industry for about almost 20 years, something like that. I guess it's 18 years. And I spent 2 years working at Twitter about 5 years ago, back in 2016, 17, on the live video side of things there. But I know a lot of people who, I won't say I know a lot of people who work there. I know a lot of people who worked there until a week or two ago. And now I'm not sure I know anyone who still works there. So
Okay, wow. Well, thank you for coming on. And I should say we went to college together and knew each other a little bit back then. And I guess reconnected on Twitter. So this is so I've done a
yes.
couple of episodes on the topic of Twitter, but I wanted to talk to you because you have, most of the people commenting about this are users or pundits or something. And I haven't seen, I mean, obviously there's people who know the tech side of it who are weighing in, but not that many people are bridging bridging the gap. So yeah, I was hoping to talk to you about what's happening to Twitter. And we should say we're taping this Friday afternoon, November 18th. The story is changing by the hour basically, and like chaotic things are happening constantly. And so the the latest basically was that seemingly a bunch of people who were not laid off at Twitter chose to resign and get a severance package yesterday. And then this, I've seen different accounts, but maybe the company is like between 1/3 and 1/8 of what it was when Musk first acquired it in terms of staffing. But
I've seen even lower estimates. I have no idea I don't know where these data comes from, to be honest, but it doesn't seem like anyone knows, which is its own strange story, right? So,
right. Okay. So yeah, first of all, why don't you say a little bit about your background and how you got into working in the tech industry?
yeah. So, I mean, I've been working in tech pretty much since I graduated college back in 2005. I worked for a couple big companies, Microsoft and Amazon, sort of early in my career. I joined Twitter in 2015. I had been I still am involved in digital video streaming technology stuff. And I ran sort of the back end team that implements a lot of the video and audio and image processing stuff. So if you upload a tweet or a photo or video, obviously ran the engineering team that builds all the back end services for that. So I was there for a couple of years. Um, I had there were things I loved about it. There were things I hated about it. I obviously did not stay a very long time relatively, but it's definitely been kind of sad to see all this stuff go down. But
Well, can you talk a little bit more about what it was like working there, maybe compared to another large
yeah.
tech company?
Well, I would say it has a very kind of uh, friendly and sort of very like positive energy to the culture there. At least when I was there, the people get along really well. There's a good sense of camaraderie. Like I think that's part of what makes this whole thing feel kind of crazy to me. Is just this is so different from the kind of culture that I experienced there. Now that culture might not be ideal. I wouldn't say it is. Like I did not feel a big push or a big drive to get stuff done there the way I felt it at other companies.
Huh.
Um, but I do think that that's kind of like it makes this shift even more monumental. It's not like they're going from this very hard driving culture to an even more hard driving culture. So I think it's a huge shift in that regard. I never felt super confident in leadership there having a plan in terms of like the product and where it was going and how to grow. They've kind of been stuck for years at this sort of plateau of whatever it is, 300 million monthly users, which is not nothing, but like they've never figured out a way to really take it up from there. And I think arguably that's why it ended up in a sale. It does not seem like Elon Musk has a plan to go beyond that either, if we're honest. But to me, that was like part of what I left is I just didn't see that vision for how they could get past that kind of point that they'd hit.
Okay. I mean, he seems to have. Well, he have a plan. He seems to have ideas or something.
Yeah.
It seems scattershot from the outside of implementing
Yeah.
something very quickly, then withdrawing it, and then forcing people to to sign like a loyalty oath, more or less, or leave the company. What did you think when you heard that Musk wanted to buy the company?
I was kind of, I mean, I think I probably felt the same as most people that it was kind of like, okay, does he want to really own and operate this thing? Or is he just frustrated that people tweet mean stuff about him sometimes or believing some of what I think is largely nonsense of like right wing voices are being silenced or certain political views are not welcome Like it felt like that to me. It still does, I think. Like it still feels like his primary motivations for wanting to buy it were not like if I was going to spend $40 billion on something, I would feel like my motivation would be I really believe I have a plan here. I can see that this is a valuable business worth more than I'm paying for it if it was just being run the right way. I don't see any indication that he feels that way or that that was the reasoning behind the decision to make the acquisition.
Hmm. I mean, he seems impulsive and like he changes his mind a lot. And obviously, he tried to get out of the deal in
Yeah.
various ways, and then ultimately agreed to do it under some duress. um,
Which is its own like yeah, why how that all folded out and why the board's pressuring. I think the board kind of was they had no choice. Like there was so much money on the line. They had no choice at that point but to push him to complete the deal. I can kind of understand. Now, I think the board did a good job in the run up before the offer even, probably not. But in this case, like I don't know what people want them to have done. They can't turn down that kind of money for a company that's pretty visibly not worth that much money.
right. And then, it seemed like I mean, the tech bubble may have finally burst. It's unclear, but at least there's been, tech
Yeah.
stocks have gone way down. And like he put his offer in like 3 weeks before
The
the
worst
peak.
timing possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it seems like a lot of the complaints. Well, I mean, people have a lot of different complaints about Twitter, but the ones that he's receptive to seem to be around moderation and this idea that there's like a liberal or leftist or woke quote unquote slant to like the people who work at Twitter, or yeah, that they're silencing conservative voices. And obviously, Trump was kicked off the platform, and one thing that seemed to irritate Musk was suspending the Babylon Bee, which is this sort of right wing version of the Onion that does parody news that is pretty unfunny. But they
Yes, I
they
agree.
they had like an anti-trans article, and that seemed to get them suspended or something, and that really set off Musk apparently. So when you were there, what it like was it is it full of woke people with blue hair who are trying to silence the right, or I mean that's the caricatured view. Is How did that strike you?
I would not deny the company if you're asking about like the employee base. I mean, it's in San Francisco, it's, wealthier, tech people largely is the user base. I'm sure that there's a diversity of political view, but like for sure, I would be stunned if the political leanings of the employee base were not left. That said, like I believe the company strives to do, it really did strive to be balanced, to be even-handed as much as it could be. There's always limits there. Like the two sides of the political spectrum do not at any given time operate with identical levels of malfeasance or whatever you want to call it, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sure there are places where the left would, there have been times in history where the left was the ones pulling this kind of stuff. But like, I think it's hard to be in this country right now and feel like the left is doing the same number of egregious things as the right in terms of some of these things. And so I think naturally there's that feeling of being you know, persecuted. But I didn't see evidence when I was there that like there was certainly not any open, oh no, we can't allow that. This is a leftist company, not a right wing company. We need to tamp that down. I think the trust and safety people who've largely been chased out or either resigned or quit or been fired, like they really did, I think, try to really embrace free speech, like in its real meaning of like not letting governments censor people's voices rather than this sort of, to me, made up free speech idea of like, I have to make sure that Nazis get to say whatever they want about the Jews. Like, that's not to me what free speech really is about.
Uh-huh. So you were there during a maybe pivotal time in Twitter because it was did Trump declare for president before or after you started there?
I think I was there for the election. So I was there kind of, and there was a lot of internal, I mean, maybe a great counterexample to the question you asked a moment ago is like, I was there were tons of employees lobbying Jack. You got to kick Trump off the platform. You cannot leave him here. Look at some of this stuff. And there were, people seem to forget, like there were legitimately things he was tweeting that were like threats against the lives of American citizens or statements that bordered on illegal. Like there was a lot of employees that were very angry about that were lobbying leadership to ban him. And I think there was a lot of resistance to it. Like it was very clear that like the powers that be of the company felt that from a free speech, or whatever you call it, free speech or free marketplace video, whatever you want to call it, they felt that it was important to give a platform to the president of the United States. That feels crazy to say, but they felt like it's not unreasonable to it is better for people to know what this guy is thinking and saying than it is to not have them know. And it was only, I think, when it got to the point of like real. Now, whether the thing that actually, I don't even remember what the thing was that sort of broke the camel's back on
Well, I
him
mean, it
getting
was
banned,
a couple days after January 6th, I think.
yeah,
Maybe the account was locked on January 6th. I'm trying to recall. No, because
yeah,
he sent out a message. There was a video message. It is kind of
okay.
so much happened, but it was in the immediate days after January 6th that his account was finally suspended.
Right. It was like literally it took it actually achieving violence, I guess, before they finally banned him.
Right.
There were definitely people who felt it should have been done years in advance. And I think that it's a kind of, to me, as the company was so, whether you want to call it patient or whatever you want to call it, like they really, I think, tried to resist doing that because they felt it was better to like give a guy like that the speech, let him speak to people, let people see what he's saying and make their own decisions.
Mm-hmm. So you were working on video, and
Yeah.
that's maybe has different, like implications for this sort of stuff than just text or image does. I mean, how did you think about that sort of thing? Because there's been these horrible incidents where like someone like live streamed a shooting or something like that, or people like taping themselves, committing violence against other people or committing suicide or something like that. How did you think about that sort of stuff, or incendiary political speech, or just pornography, I guess, would be another thing that does exist still on Twitter, and that a lot of that is on video. How did you think about these sort of issues related to video?
Well, the incident that really like stuck out in my mind that happened there was there's this, I guess he's a political writer, Kurt Eichenwald, who has epilepsy.
Oh yes,
And
yes.
someone intentionally, while I was there, intentionally sent him a video designed to trigger and successfully designed to trigger seizures. I mean, it was like literally physically attacking someone using video on Twitter.
Mhm.
And so that did bring into kind of like stark relief for me. This is real stuff. Even though it's virtual, it's just the internet. You can ignore it. Was the theory, like it's not the case. Like it does matter, and it can reach out into real life,
Right.
indirectly or very directly, right?
Right, and I believe, if I'm remembering the details of that correctly, Kurt Eichenwald did have a seizure because he viewed this
Yeah.
video, and then the person who sent it to him was later, I believe, criminally prosecuted, or at least maybe there was just like a civil case against him, which he lost. So that person got in trouble either criminally or with some sort of civil penalty.
Yeah. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but yeah, like I think it didn't feel that different to me in the terms of the video. It's just a much harder problem with video, like and images, right? It's like with text, there's a degree to which it's like kind of straightforward to see how you can sort of censor it. But with video, it's just there's so much more data there. It's even harder to do any kind of automated detection of what kind of content is in there. And you really kind of there, and don't get me wrong, Twitter actually had a pretty mature backend in terms of doing things like automated detection of child pornography or automated detection of certain kind of copyrighted materials or certain other kinds of things that are sort of not allowed. But
Mhm.
there, it is harder, right? It's much harder with video and audio to sort of find these things and figure out what's okay, what's not okay to have on the platform.
Right. And one way that Twitter has stood out from some of the other social media networks or media sites is they do allow pornography to exist on the platform. Whereas I'm pretty sure if you tried to upload, your amateur porn to YouTube, they have algorithms that would detect it somehow. Whereas I was joking about this a month or so ago on Twitter. Like if there's a random phrase trending and you click on it, there's like some chance, like a 5% chance or so, that you're going to see pornography if you just start scrolling down. And I remember I saw Times Square. This was like a month ago. I saw Times Square trending, and my first thought was, oh, there was some sort of like a bomb went off in Times Square or something. So I clicked on it, and it was just the first two tweets were just random, and then the third one was like a woman like having sex, saying like I'm going to be in Times Square later to have sex with anyone who wants, and it was like video of her having sex. So
Well, we used to go through, we would track obviously the sort of top video posting accounts, and it was you'd have your top 10 list, and your top 10 video posters would be like Bleacher Report Sports, hardcore XXX videos tweeted. It'd just be like this intermingled list of like the largest publications and sports broadcasters and media companies in the world mixed in with YouPorn and RedTube and whatever other,
Okay, so I
accounts
assume
were
there were
driving traffic back then.
internal discussions about whether Twitter should be like a family friendly, sort of
I
PG-13
think they did a lot
site.
to try and there was automated and manual tooling to sort of like flag accounts and videos as being sort of not safe for work and cordon those things off so that they don't show up in search the same way that other things. You kind of have to be looking for them to find them. I didn't actually hear a lot of debate, to be honest, of like when I was there, I never heard debate of like, oh, we shouldn't allow this stuff on the platform. Now I don't know if that's because it was driving revenue or what.
Well, that's
But
interesting because it did sort of have, for what I could understand of Jack Dorsey's ideology was sort of a a libertarian vision,
yeah,
and sort of like, yeah, letting things beyond there, was the default. Whereas maybe there's a whole running debate on Instagram, as far as I understand, about showing nipples, where
yeah.
a male torso with nipples, that's fine. Like a woman breastfeeding or something might be like the algorithm might catch it, and then just a topless woman, you could get your account canceled or something. So, it was. Do you think it was just that sort of libertarian ethos that made it so that porn thrived
I
on
think
Twitter?
so. Like to be honest, like I wasn't. No, I was on the engineering side, so I wasn't involved in those things. But yeah, I never saw a move to. There were definitely discussions of like how do we better flag stuff, how do we better tag things, but not of how do we get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you'd also lose out golden moments like Ted Cruz retweeting pornography or whatever, right? But
Okay, I believe his account liked, yes, a
okay,
porn video,
yeah,
which I assume was a staffer, not actually him. Although I guess we'll never
we'll
fully
never
know.
know.
But yeah, that was an iconic Twitter moment, and I believe it. God, I have so much Twitter nonsense in my mind. I believe it was like stepmother porn. What was the specific thing that was faved in
What
this?
became its own meme, right? I don't even
Yeah,
know
the
what
woman like
with the
biting her
woman in the
finger.
glasses leaning against the pole or
Oh
whatever.
boy. Yeah, it really is. I did a joke tweet with that. The a replicant from giving his dying you people wouldn't believe what I've seen, but there really is a lot of bizarre stuff that's happened on
Yeah, there
Twitter,
is.
more so than other social media sites. Okay.
Well, I guess one other thing I'd mention there is like I kind of just made it occurred to me in my head, like as I said, I was on the engineering side. Like I think part of what's been fascinating to me about some of that Elon Musk stuff is there's all this stuff getting posted about him wanting to review devs code or figuring out which
Right.
engineers really make a difference and whatever it is. And like putting aside how dumb some of those methods are for actually identifying good engineering or bad engineering, like Twitter's problems are not and have not been engineering problems since the days of the fail whale. Like if you look at Twitter and you're like, what's wrong with that company? The problem is not that the Android app isn't fast enough or that the timeline recommendations aren't good enough. Like I don't believe those are the things that drive the problems for Twitter. I
Uh-huh.
think it's a lot, like you said, it's a lot more about moderation and content decisions and how advertisers view the platform and like those are the things that are problem. Those are product problems or those are not technical problems. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, so something that the site, the company is like leaking to the press, like like the worst days of the Trump White House or something. So
Yeah.
so like every email that's getting circulated goes to a journalist, and they're posting it on Twitter, of course. Yeah, so it seems like Musk he like wants the high level engineers and developers to like come and like show him like their 10 best lines of code that they like wrote. I don't know anything about like writing code at all, but like that didn't make people were like, like what are the 10 best like strokes of paint you had done if you were a painter or something. Like it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So when I sent it to you, you asked, "Is this real?" And as far as
Yeah.
I know, it's a legit reporter who sent this out. Like, what did you think of that? And like, does that show that Musk doesn't know like anything, or like, what do you make of
It's
that?
sort of just an insane. If you said, "Hey, what are some projects or things you delivered, features you delivered, or something that you're most proud of?" Okay, I can understand that, right? And maybe it's a fair question, maybe it's not, but it's like, what have you delivered for the company you're proud of? Lines of code you are proud of is just like it's like going to an architect and be like, "Show me the like doors that you're the proudest of having put in these buildings or something," right? It's like what that has nothing to do with your job. It doesn't really. It's just such a strange question. It's like I don't even know where to begin. Like that's just not how development works. And it's not how software engineering, certainly how software engineers would think about their contributions to a company. And as someone who's been managing software engineers for a decade, like I can't imagine trying to evaluate an engineer's abilities or quality or usefulness to the company or any of those things based on like show me your best line of code, right? Like that's just a very strange question. I don't even know how to what analogy makes sense for that.
Okay, so it does. I mean, does this show that Musk somehow doesn't understand like modern technology? I mean, he's more. I mean, he started at PayPal with a company that became PayPal, I think. But like
Yeah.
his more recent stuff is more like engineering, like physical engineering with rocket ships and cars and stuff. So maybe he thinks it's like, show me like the door handle that you designed that you think is like the best door handle or something, and that he's going to look at it. So maybe
Yeah.
that in the physical world that makes more sense. I mean, yeah, what do you like? What do you think he's thinking?
There's no evidence with all the stuff that's leaked, there's no evidence he has a clue what software how software engineering works or what like, and like I said, I don't know that that's necessary to if you're talking about like someone needs to fix quote unquote Twitter. I don't believe the engineering is the problem. So I don't know that that's necessary that the person running the company be an engineer or that they understand to that level. But like he's kind of wading into that domain and he seems very unknowledgeable. Like these questions he's asking, even like the whole lines of code thing is there was some idea of like counting lines of code. I mean, that is sort of like evaluating painters by like how many gallons of paint they used in painting their paintings, right? Like many engineers, good engineers would say, my job is to use the fewest lines of code possible to accomplish my goals, because that means less complexity, better performance, better maintainability, better readability. That, you want to design simple systems, right?
Right.
As opposed to like, oh, let me churn out the most, you're measuring quantity rather than quality very, very baldly. So that is very strange. And it does not really align with someone who really has an understanding of what software engineering looks like. And like I said, that might be fine if you knew that about yourself and you said, I'm a product guy, I'm not an engineering guy, that would be fine. But at the point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go look at the lines of code people have and decide whether to fire them or not based on their best line of code, that's sort of just an insane proposition.
Okay, so yeah, from a layperson's perspective, I also thought that this didn't make any sense.
Well, you were right.
Okay, so if you had, if you were still working at Twitter and you did not get laid off in the initial layoffs, and then you got this,
Ultimatum.
yeah, ultimatum or with 3 month severance, or you're now signing up for the hardcore, version of working at Twitter, what would you have done?
I think the only thing that makes this complicated, first of all, I think like a year ago, that question would have been super easy. I think that the state of the tech business right now, the bubble having seemed to have popped, like there's not a lot of companies laying off rather than hiring. I think that all makes it a slightly harder question, right? And it's very easy for me having a job and enough money to be fine for a time and, a house with a roof over my head. It's easy for me to say, oh, I would just take the money. But I do think it is just I don't understand why anyone would stay. I really don't. Like, with the exception of people who have visas, where maybe that's another example of the case where just like they can't say no, they can't leave. With the exception of people who are trapped for one or other financial or visa related reason, I don't know why you'd stay. And I think it's sort of like this classic problem to some degree in the tech business of people have this, I don't know what you'd call it, like this overly rosy or very just this image of a startup as like the ultimate thing that we want to accomplish. And like, I want my company to run like a startup. And the thing about a startup is if he was starting a new company, a new Twitter 2.0, and he wanted all these people to join and be quote unquote hardcore, they would get stock options. They would get upside that would say, hey, if you are working 100-hour weeks and you kill yourself over this, but it succeeds, you're going to benefit. But here you're going to people who have, sort of steady corporate jobs, and you're saying, hey, I want you to work twice as much as you used to for no financial benefit. And I don't believe there was a great thread today on Twitter, actually, from like someone who left, basically saying, like, I didn't see the vision. Like, that was the reason I left. It wasn't that I hate Elon Musk. It wasn't I disagree with some of these decisions. Like, what is the vision? Like, why is this going to succeed? he hasn't said anything internally to people. All we know is what's been tweeted out, and there's no evidence in those tweets that he's got some plan where Twitter is actually doing something different than it has done. Not little tweaks, but like we have a plan where Twitter operates differently, has a strategy that, is really unique from the old strategy. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Take the 3-month severance. These are really good engineers. Generally speaking, like Twitter, for all of its faults, like it has a very strong engineering culture. They've built services there that scale to honestly kind of insane degrees. One of the things that stood out to me there was, we had to stand up a new service while I was there to handle some of the live video stuff. And it was like the hard part of that service was not getting it to run 1 million requests per second. Normally, that's like an insanely daunting task at a company to scale a new service up to that. But at Twitter, it just felt like, oh, no, we know how to build things to that scale. We just got to implement the part of it that does what we need it to do. That is a unique, there's not a lot of companies that have those kind of chops. And I think in a culture where there is some kind of hiring, these Twitter engineers are going to be able to find things that they are looking for out in the market. Now, that might be hard for the next few months or however long based on this current economic climate. But I do believe that I would have been surprised if this hadn't been the outcome. If what we're seeing reported that 75, 80% of people took the severance, that's not at all surprising to me. I would have been surprised if the opposite occurred.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Going forward, so last night after it was reported, I guess that so many people had quit, and then it was reported that they locked down all the offices and the people's employment badges wouldn't work to get in anymore. There was sort of a the Titanic is sinking sort of both elegy and celebration among the self-hating Twitter users, and the gif of the band playing from the James Cameron Titanic movie saying it's been an honor serving with you gentlemen was probably used 100,000 times or something, because there's a weird ethos among people who use Twitter of sort of we're in the trenches, this is a war, we're suffering, and for what exactly? And sort of our service has ended or something.
Well, and this idea of people clicking F5 on Twitter webpage expecting that any minute now it's going to be gone, right?
Right. Okay. So it's still, the website did not stop working. Do you have any thoughts about what could happen given that a lot of people who used to maintain the website are taking the buyouts? Okay, could it completely collapse, or could it just everything stops working as it used to? I mean, or as it has the past couple of years, the fail whale, that used to happen a lot. So it used to just the website would go down for some length of time and it became a joke, and they used this image of a whale. So that used to be a semi-regular occurrence, and I guess they improved the back end such that it hasn't gone down entirely in a while. Will it just be that outages and sort of it's not functioning as well?
There's a lot of prognostication about this, and I don't know. I mean, I'm highly skeptical of the idea that that there's 7,000 employees and every one of them has a different finger in a different hole in the dike, and they all leave, a bunch of them leave, and you're now the countdown is on, the site's going to collapse. I don't believe that's the case, but I think it's more likely that over time you start to accumulate issues that you start to basically have rot, is the way to think about it, of because any large scale service like this, you're not operating in a vacuum. It is not a contained thing that just keeps working, right? It's you have all these dependencies where you're reaching out to other services, you're relying on updated hardware, you're generally, this is not a closed ecosystem. And over time, those changes start to accumulate and you start to have to make updates. And if you're not making them, things will start to get brittle. I don't know what that looks like and whether they can sort of hire people or reshuffle support or make changes to address that fast enough to avoid stability problems. I don't know. I do think it would be a very big challenge to be on a 10% staff or whatever they're on and be trying to do a lot of new feature work. There's going to be a very large burden of support. There always is. And it's let's say that was 10% of the work previously. Well, if you lose 90% of the people now, is that 100% of the work, 50% of the work, just to keep the lights on, so to speak, right? Just to keep things running. Mm-hmm. I think it's gonna be hard to make investments with that, minimal of a staff. But I don't know what to expect. Could things all go sideways next week? or Sunday. I mean, the World Cup was historically one of the largest driver. Like a World Cup goal is one of the things that drives like the most Twitter traffic kind of in a 20-second
You mean like
period.
a literal goal in a World Cup game, like people are tweeting goal or
Right.
nay or
It's like
whatever.
literally like there is a goal. 6 million people see it on television and all tweet at once. Oh my God, did you see what Messi did? And you get this huge flood of traffic. Like that is historic. Those kind of events are what kind of tax the system.
Uh-huh.
Do I expect that suddenly it's like, I think it's a well-designed system that's going to be resilient for the most part. It's just like eventually all of these little problems not getting fixed will start to accumulate is what I would expect to happen. And it's going to make it harder and harder to make investments in the platform because you're going to be constantly just trying to keep things running.
Right. And I'd be interested in your perspective on this. I mean, you sort of mentioned, Barstool Sports being a popular video thing. When you look at the global trending things, like 75% of them are sports. And it seems like a lot of what people talk about on Twitter is really just whatever they're watching on TV, and most people are watching sports. And so it's, thinking about this as like this free speech public square sort of thing, I was comparing it to more like, a sports talk radio or something, except everyone is participating. And, yeah, watching a game and then tweeting your reactions seems to be more of what the average Twitter user does than like debating abstruse, political philosophy or something. Is,
Yeah.
is
Well,
that accurate?
I think when I was working on live video at Twitter, whatever, 5 years ago, we ran Thursday Night Football. That was like the year we had the rights to Thursday Night Football. So I kind of got a front row seat there, and it was also right before the election. So we were running live video feeds that you could kind of see the video and tweet and see all the tweets about the debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
The debates drove as much or more traffic than sports. So I think there's kind of like a few things that happen live, events that are happening live that people are absorbed in. And I think sports is a big one. I think politics can be a driver. Like I think when you have something like the election we just had in the US, that does drive a ton of interest and traffic for sure. So I think, but there are kind of a few verticals, if you will, that tend to be the focus areas of kind of what people are doing. I think the theory behind live video on Twitter was what you said. It's like people are basically tweeting about what they're watching. Then why not have them watch it on Twitter? I think so. I do think there's something to that for sure. But it is a little weird that like if sports is such a big part, like that doesn't seem nearly as involved in the whole woke and leftist debate, right? But
Yeah, I mean, do normal people still use Twitter? Do you think the way that
I don't
normal people
know.
use Facebook?
I don't know. I don't know. Like I didn't use Twitter at all until I worked there, and I have not
Okay.
stopped since I worked there. I kind of got hooked, and I think many
Mhm.
people are hooked. There's this running meme, obviously, of just like it's a hell site. I hate that I use it. It makes me hate myself, but I can't stop. Like I don't feel that way. Like it's a great. I try if I try to quit, it's just like there was something like a couple weeks ago where it was like I went off it for half a day, and then something happened, and I was like, oh, I got to get on there and figure out you know what? It's unpleasant. There was a shooting in Seattle at a school
Mhm.
here. And I was like, what's going on? Where do I get information about that? Well, the place I would go to get the latest information is to go to Twitter. That's how I know what's going on. And so I think that part of the site, like it's very well done in that regard. And that is hard to replicate elsewhere. Do normal, quote unquote, normal people use it for that? I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what qualifies as normal, but
Right.
300 million people, like some of them have to be normal, right? But um,
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I think statistically some of them would have to be, but yeah, I mean, it's quite good for following breaking news,
yeah.
and it had other things it's good for are seeing funny jokes and sort of creating memes and stuff like that, and it's also good for like seeing people like acting like crazy in all sorts of ways you never thought people could act crazy, or just saying like things you never thought possible that people could think are expressed publicly. So that's sort of a Schadenfreude type thing, and probably not like ultimately good in some sort of larger sense, but sort of yeah, like a like watching. So this metaphor comes from Max Reed, his newsletter today. Actually, he said Twitter is sometimes sort of like people like bystanders like trying to press into like a crime scene and see like the bodies being taken out or something. There's like a rubbernecking, like looking at the disaster sort of aspect to it, and Yeah, that's I think it attracts a certain personality type, and the type of person who just wants to look at photos of like their cousin's children or something. Like Twitter alienates that sort of person. But there is there's an addictive aspect to it, and so that's why I've been sort of rooting for it to collapse or something, or become so unpalatable, or start charging or something, so that would help me break my the addictive
You
tendencies.
want to get off, and you need help getting off.
I mean, I think
Um,
it is sort of I think it's like it's messed with my mind and my brain in ways that I don't think have like a use outside of Twitter, such that I see like a phrase and then a Twitter style joke forms in my mind unbidden, and that's good, that good quote unquote on Twitter, but like I can't monetize that skill, or if I'm talking to normal people, they don't want to hear a like in this economy joke. They don't know like that doesn't make any sense to them, and it's not even funny outside of Twitter. It's only funny on Twitter. So yeah, so I think it's probably a net negative for me, but I'm still on there the way that I've used this metaphor before, sort of like someone who has a drinking problem has had plenty of fun times down at the corner bar, and lots of great memories there. But like if the bar got bulldozed, it would probably be good for the local drunk who would maybe like start making better decisions.
I
Well,
did think to myself, like, let's say it all did. It certainly the last 2 weeks. I thought, like, if it all collapsed, what would I do? Like when I would go to Twitter to look for something, now where would I go? Is it like I go to NewYorkTimes.com now to find out? Like, is that the alternative place? Like, what is
right.
that next step, right? Or what would be the alternative? Because it's not Facebook or Instagram, I don't think so.
No, for news, I mean, yeah, I think the Times would be the closest thing um, that could replace Twitter, and they do have sort of like they built in Twitter like updates into their pages. So like if you click on their Ukraine thing, there's like the main article is pinned on top. Someone
But then
can
it's
do
like, what's new right
a pinned
now? Kind of.
tweet, and then updates like short updates are coming in a like timeline like feed. Whereas maybe 10 years ago they would have been one article that they were updating and putting in like the latest thing in the third paragraph or something. So you can say that Twitter, with which pioneered the timeline, sort of has changed news consumption in that way. But yeah, but also like I used to be a huge consumer of blogs in general. Andrew Sullivan's blog, which was sort of a proto Twitter, that he would, if there was breaking news, him and his staffers would like put links in, and you would check it like every hour or so, and like new stuff would be
Yeah.
there. So yeah, maybe something like that, like blog type entrepreneurs would try to recreate something along those lines of just intentionally aggregating sources instead of like the algorithm doing it or who you follow doing it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like I can't really picture it being Mastodon. That's the next thing, but I admit
Right.
I
I mean,
haven't
have you
really
looked at
tried.
any
But
of the competitor or copycat sites? And
I've tried to look at Mastodon, and I think like many people, it's like the whole like, oh, pick your server, and I'm like, it's just like, oh, this is too complicated. I just want to make an account and start looking around.
uh-huh.
I don't know. I've already left all the Facebook properties, so maybe I don't know if that
Oh,
paints me
interesting.
as in a certain light, but um I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What am I going to do without Twitter? Is maybe a sad question to ask. I don't really feel that way. Like there'll be a gaping hole in my life without it. But
I
um,
mean, the idle moments that you used to have, where you would maybe stare off into space, or if you had a book with you, you would read a book or a magazine or something. Like now, it's, at least for me, it's check Twitter and see what the latest nonsense is. Well, what have you thought about Musk's like monetization ideas, and have it in like the whole blue check kind of stuff?
I guess I have a few things there. Like, well, one thing is that someone said to me recently, like, it's a good product at a bad company. I think it's maybe like the philosophy that Jack had too, right? It's like or maybe a better way to put it, it's a good product in a bad business. Like it's just not really clear how this is. How do you is the right way for this thing to exist to be a for-profit entity that is monetized? And I know Jack Dorsey said that publicly. Then he said he thought somehow Elon Musk would be the guy to fix that. Maybe that's questionable now, but
Mhm.
um, I think they got to be open to these things. Like I think it's kind of a trend on the internet in general that ads are not what they used to be. Whether that's because of Apple's policies, whether that's there's a million things it could be from, like or just the fact that like you have so much more tracking, so much more visibility as an advertiser to your ads working or not, and how much they're worth to you. that you realize they're actually not worth as much as you used to pay for them.
Right.
But it does feel like figuring out a different way to monetize makes sense. Now, there was a lot of stuff about like, oh, if that Twitter might become pay to play or pay to use it at all, right? That you need a subscription to be on Twitter. And that was like an insane proposal where I'm like, I don't know. It's a little hard for me to say that that's a bad idea. Like they've got to find some way to monetize. And I'm getting value out of the platform. I don't believe I'm contributing back in ad viewing what I'm taking out in terms of the amount of usage. I like
Mhm.
they would probably be better off saying, hey, Josh, give us $2 a month and you don't have to see any ads, and I'd probably do it. And they'd probably make more money off me that way than they're getting today.
Mhm.
But so I think they should be open. I think part of the one thing that a new CEO should have for Twitter is like, what are the other ways you can monetize this? The blue check thing in particular, I think that was just a really bad idea. It's not thought out. And verification, the customer for verification is not the person getting verified. That is not why verification existed,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Like the New York Times does not get verified because the New York Times wants to be verified. I want the New York Times to be verified so that I know when I see a tweet from them, it is from them and not from some dude who changed his profile picture and name to say the New York Times.
Mhm.
So to me, like that is the core misunderstanding of that idea was like he think it comes from a place, I believe, of like these persecuted in, not really but feeling persecuted on Twitter. The blue check is special and I don't have one, therefore I should be able to buy one. Like it's that mindset as opposed to actually thinking about what those blue checks are for and what they are meant to represent is that like this is and I think really is important to the idea of Twitter. If you want it to be this open town hall forum where anyone can say whatever they want, how do I know when I'm seeing something from the sort of the real deal versus the millions of impersonators, which is just to me, it's a whack-a-mole trying and catch all of these. There were things they said about like anyone who doesn't have parody in their name. It is what it's like. You're never going to catch all those people. It makes much more sense to verify from the other side is like, and there were tight rules around that verification process. Like there were types of people who can be types of businesses and people who can be verified and people who can't. And I think those things all those were well thought out and developed over many years towards a pretty coherent policy.
Yeah, I think the way you put it about the main customer of verification was not the person being verified or the entity being verified. That makes a lot of sense. I think they screwed it up in various ways um even before Musk came in, where they did sort of make it like a badge of like elite in some way.
Hmm.
And that it makes sense that you like Eli Lilly wants to be verified as being the actual Eli Lilly, and some sort of regime of like universal verification would make some sort of sense, which I guess Facebook has at least some version of. And but Twitter has such a culture of like anime avatars and anonymous
Yeah.
jokesters and stuff that maybe that would have disrupted the site anyway. But
Well, there is like that question of like, should drill be verified? Like, is it important to know I'm seeing the real drill? Like, if he doesn't deserve to be verified, who does? Kind of mindset to some.
right. And Drill also launched a war against the newly verified people, saying he was going to block anyone who was newly verified who he saw.
There
Drill
you go.
being a sort of savant genius tweeter of the weird Twitter part of the site or era.
Well, there have been a lot of tributes to the greatest tweets and greatest tweeters.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of like it's unambiguous to me that he is the greatest tweeter with all of both the positive and negative connotations that might say, right? He is the king of all posters, so to speak. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you had, I actually semi jokingly, but only semi jokingly, tweeted like Musk should like try to hire Drill to be on like the like accountability board or like the censorship board or something, because the guy is a genius of the form, and he knows more about Twitter than Elon Musk does. Clearly, I think I know more about it than Musk does. It's been revealed, but like this guy understands something about the way the site works. But I guess he probably wouldn't actually want to. The real human who does the site wouldn't want, or does the account wouldn't want to participate. But yeah, people like you would bring in like Rob Delaney or something to like serve on the like council of elders within Twitter, or
Hmm.
or Joyce Carol Oates. Like you would want people like this um, weighing in. But yeah, but the fact that there was like people who had some level of prominence who would apply for it and say and like send a copy of the driver's license and then they wouldn't get it, like that made it seem like Twitter was judging who was worthy of this thing, and it wasn't just verifying that a public or semi-public figure.
I mean, there is like I took my company through the process at one point, and we were like a small company with not many followers. We got verified, but like there's a very set criteria of like figures in the following roles. You're a journalist at a recognized institution. You're a company that's publicly held or privately held above a certain market. I mean, there was a set of things that were theoretically criteria that, you know, I am not as myself eligible for verification because I don't play one of these roles in society.
Mhm.
Maybe that list is right or wrong, but to me, it never bothered me that I couldn't get verified. But obviously, there's people for whom it's like a big status symbol, a big deal to them that they don't get a blue check for whatever reason, right?
No, I don't think it was intentional. Like, it made sense why it was implemented. I don't think it was intentional that it became this status symbol, but there probably were things they could have done to remove the status symbol sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did become sort of, I mean, multiple people reference the Dr. Seuss, those have stars and those with ours or
Yeah.
whatever sort of thing of like, it just a lot of what happens on Twitter is tribalism, and it created a tribe of the blue checks who actually had very little in common besides maybe they like worked in journalism at one point or may have worked at BuzzFeed 10 years ago. It made it seem like there was this class system set up, and then like there were aspects of like you would if you were verified you would see verified replies in some way like filtered for you or something. So I think they screwed a lot of things up, but that was one thing
I mean,
they
the
screwed
idea
up.
that like there's I think Drill's a great example of like you're never gonna verify Drill. You know, you're never gonna like get him to put his real name on there and be that guy. And the idea that you would create a system where you're not able to see his tweets anymore is crazy, right? Like that's part of why people come to Twitter is for these anonymous jokester accounts. That is a big, to me, it's actually a significant part of the appeal of Twitter is like these guys can post with impunity. They can say crazy stuff that you wouldn't normally, they're not going off the deep end and threatening people or doing anything dangerous, but just like they can say stuff they wouldn't be willing to otherwise.
Yeah, there's definitely a like class clown like aspect of the site where you had people who are very serious type people putting pronouncements in like Ted Cruz or something, and then the average the average person could send them like an image of a poop or something. Like that doesn't happen on other parts of life or the internet.
And that's America, man. That's what America's all about.
Right. No, I mean, I said this in a previous episode. There's not a lot of times in life that you could say fuck you to a rich or powerful person, and you can do that on Twitter. Maybe you might get a slap on the wrist or something if you use especially bad language, but yeah, you can mock you can mock anyone, and as long as you probably won't get in trouble if you don't do it in some violent way. Um, I just got a New York Times alert that says at least 1,200 Twitter workers resigned on Thursday. Um, so that would be, I guess, about a third of the people who were remaining. But
Which is less than I'd read in some
right,
forums.
they say at least, so maybe that's it could go higher. Okay, let's see. Do you think that there could be a like good version of Twitter that maybe what like a Wikipedia version of Twitter or something that isn't being run like it isn't trying to maximize ad views or something or get money out of its users, but could be run in a way that like with like the ethos of like a message board from 20 years ago. Is this possible or no?
I don't know. Like the problem with Twitter is like the problem with all these things online is it's the people on it that are the problem, right? Like the platform is like 90% of what you talk about is how does the platform control and moderate and block and flag and otherwise sort of remove the stuff that shouldn't be up there. That's like the biggest problem, that part is a hard technology problem to some degree. Whether you could somehow make a Twitter that doesn't have that problem, like I don't know if that's possible. Like I think that's sort of part of there's got that tension over that as part of what makes it work to some degree. Like you need people pushing the envelope and you need to have some point where it's like not okay anymore, probably.
Yeah. No, you need moderators. I think if there's no moderation, then it becomes 4chan and posting Nazi stuff
Yep.
and like trying to post child porn and having it be taken down because that's like one of the few things that's truly illegal to do. But
Well, how far is Twitter now from this state that we're describing? I guess is one of the interesting questions to me. Like Musk has come in and sort of made some like humongous changes, right? Very, you can argue, you can say they're dumb or smart or whatever you want, but he's definitely like coming in with an eye towards we need to make enormous changes here. We need lots of people to go. We need to make huge sweeping product changes. We need to reconsider how we monetize. We need to reconsider how we advertise. And like, is that the scale of problems that exists there? And does it actually need to be resolved by those big changes? I think is an interesting question because stuff kind of mostly works there. And like, there was a really interesting thread. I wish I could remember who it was a few weeks, maybe a week or two ago, basically saying like Twitter had enough money in the bank to lose money at the rate that they were losing it for like 10 years or something before they would have real financial problems. Like it's not a company that they were kind of arguing. It's not a company that was like about to collapse and go bankrupt without immediate intervention.
mhm.
And so I don't know whether the level of crazy bold changes is actually what's needed there. Like it was a mostly functioning ecosystem. Obviously, there's people hating different aspects of it, but like it was mostly functioning. And couldn't you figure out a way to make changes in a more, I don't want to say gradual in the sense that like, oh, it didn't need bold changes, but couldn't you have sort of tried to fix it while the engine was still running, as opposed to it feels like what's going to happen here is like the engines fall out on the highway and then try and put it all back together. But we'll see. Obviously, if that happens.
Yeah, I think the moderation problem is a genuinely difficult one. I mean, I was a moderator myself at various times for the comment forums on Blogging Heads, and you're basically what I learned was you're inevitably gonna piss people off because these are not like you are not like a learned like expert in any field or anything, and it's not like a legal dispute where the judge has like final authority. And so it's often, yeah, there are people who know how to like go right up to the line, and then if a person is going right up to the line over and over and over again, you say, okay, like let's just get this person out of here. But then they can say, wait, I never did X, I never did Y, and sort of be like it turns into this this sort of like legalistic appeal. But no one is a lawyer, and yeah, so the mod anyway.
Yeah.
The people are always going to hate the mods, and but you do need some sort of that online. Like this is a lesson we've learned. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
and maybe banning the Babylon Bee was like too heavy moderation, but there's plenty of other, if you work within the channels, there's plenty of stuff you can get away with without attracting that sort of attention from the moderators. But yeah, like the posters always hate the mods. That's sort of a rule of online life.
Well, I do think it's weird when people are like, so on like that case, for example, it's like there are thousands, millions maybe of people and organizations posting on Twitter that don't cross the line into hate speech and get banned. So like it's not like these people act like there's landmines everywhere and I can't say any. It's like, why don't you try not being a Nazi? Like that is the bar we're setting. It's not that high of a bar to clear. I don't believe that they're, being super draconian and banning people left and right for the faintest glimmer of offense in their posts, right?
No, I mean, I think they were, at least for a long time, they were too lenient and too free speechy in terms of stuff. And I mean, a lot of, the like anime Nazis like emerged around 2015 or so. And a lot of those people got banned. And then they finally banned a bunch of QAnon people after the insurrection. So they've like, yeah, they've not been wielding the ban hammer in a overly aggressive way, I think. But yeah, I think it's a genuinely, it's sort of a no-win problem in which inevitably some group of people are going to be pissed off, and they can like go and start their own site or buy, I guess, if they have enough money, buy the site and then try to fix it themselves. But that's turning out to be more more
Yeah, and I
difficult.
think part of why I say it's not a technology problem is like if we can't even articulate the rule, or if people can't say what the line should be and the line is hazy, how the heck is a computer gonna? The computer's never gonna make that call, right? So
Right. No, I think it requires some amount of human judgment, and these are imperfect decisions because you're dealing with in like the normal legal system, we accept that some or we actually think it's a good thing that some guilty people will go free in the we don't want to lock up someone who's innocent, but then of course we know that innocent people do get locked up, so mistakes are made like every possible way, and we're still like, I don't know, because judges have, they wear black robes and they can order people sent to prison. We're like, okay, this is, if they decide something, you have to go with it. Like this is, you can't appeal anymore past the Supreme Court. But like, yeah, there's, I mean, Facebook tried to have this like council of elders sort of thing at one point. But yeah, there's no like true authority online. Anyone can more or less say I'm the expert, or say whatever they want. So it seems intractable to me. Okay, why don't we end things there? Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I'm amazed how long I could spend talking on this
It truly
topic,
is such a each of the conversations I've had about this has gone longer than I thought it would. It seems it's such a dumb thing in a lot of ways, but it's wrapped up in a lot of human, I don't know, parts of human nature that are strange. So I think you can talk about it sort of
Exactly.
endlessly. Okay, do you want to share your Twitter handle if people want to follow you on Twitter?
You're welcome to follow me. It's at Barndoggy, Barndawgie.
Okay, and you consume tweets, but you're not a huge tweeter yourself, probably wisely.
I retweet daily and tweet weekly or something like that is what I would say.
Okay,
So
that's
I
smart.
try occasionally. I can't stop myself, but generally,
No, yeah, and the way talking about it as sort of like a guilty pleasure or something is a flavor of the culture on there.
I fave a lot of tweets. I'll put it that way.
No, that's a generous a generous perspective. Okay, and I am ARYHCW on Twitter, and I appreciate you taking the time and giving a insider perspective on these things. So I guess we'll have to see what happens. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, okay, would you predict that the site could just like go offline for some length of time anytime in the near future, or do you think that's not going to happen?
I think that's unlikely to be the demise. I could be wrong, but to me, it's like I think what was underestimated by Musk is just how this thing is so fragile. It's not a physical thing that you're holding on to and it's worth a bunch of money, right? It's like if people start leaving, they could all disappear pretty quick and you're left with nothing. And I do think there is a risk of that if the right circumstances occur. Now, an extended outage could certainly be a driver for something like that, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess part of me wants to bet on the software all my colleagues wrote not tipping over right away.
Right. No, I mean, if all the funny, entertaining, smart people who I follow decide we're all leaving, either go somewhere else, or just you know um, getting offline, then there wouldn't be a strong reason for me to stay there.
Yeah, it
Just
could go to zero real quick, right?
yeah, like I get, yeah, it's like shouting into the void if the people you want to sort of like hang out with in a virtual way aren't there anymore.
The Google Plusification of Twitter.
Right. You could, yeah. So there's an intangible aspect to this that, yeah, I don't think Musk fully appreciated. Okay, why don't we end things there? Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Aryeh.
For coming on. Thanks to all the viewers and listeners, and we'll see you again next time.